And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are going to talk about the Baltimore Ravens and how far they could go this season. They're coming off of a huge win against the Lions. I mean, they dominated the Lions from start to finish, 38-6. And that was a game that I thought was going to be competitive, but I mean, early on you could tell the Lions have no shot in this game. And the Lions are coming in as we're coming in as one of the hottest teams in the NFL. And the Ravens still have been good. It's just, they had a bad loss against the Colts. They had a bad loss against the Steelers. I mean, it looked like the Titans were going to come back against them in London. But then they went home against the Lions, and they just dominated. I mean, touchdowns I'm pretty sure on their first 4 possessions. And yeah, first 4 possessions, all touchdowns. And yeah, they won 38-6. And listen, I said I still like the Bengals to win the division. But right now, the Ravens, they already beat them. And, yesterday, on Sunday, they looked like a really good team. The Lions, I mean, they had their chances to sack Lamar Jackson. And he was able to break out. I mean, that touchdown to Nelson Aguilar, if you haven't seen it, you just got to look that up. I mean, it looked like he was going to get sacked. He got out of it and then, throws to Nelson Aguilar. That's what he does. He's a playmaker. And, he's looked good this season. He's had a couple of rough moments. I mean, the bad pick in the end zone against the Steelers. The Steelers' loss was very bad. But a lot of that also had to do with the fact that guys that he was throwing to were just dropping the ball. But yeah, the Ravens look good. And listen, how far can they go? I mean, that's a team that if everything is clicking on all cylinders, and they look like the good Ravens, because for me, they're still kind of like that Jekyll and Hyde team. Like the Steelers game was an example of that. I mean, that's a team they should have beaten the Steelers. They should have, but they didn't. And I don't want to knock the Steelers, but yeah, I think the Ravens, they should have won that game. So you got that, but then you go up against the Lions at home, and you score 4 touchdowns on your first 4 possessions, and you dominate them, on both sides of the ball. I think this team could go a long way this year, if they play like the good Ravens. And I think the most important thing too, obviously, it's something that's held them back the last couple of seasons, is the health of their quarterback, Lamar Jackson, because he has missed time the last two seasons because of injury. And I think obviously if he stays healthy, the sky's the limit for what they can do. And they've made improvements, when it comes to their pass catchers. I mean, Zay Flowers has looked like a nice player for them this year. Obviously, you got Odell Beckham Jr. there, too, who's not the same player he once was, but still, a respectable receiver, even though he hasn't been great and he's missed time as well. Nelson Aguilar you brought in as well. I mean, those are upgrades over what they already had, at receiver. Mark Andrews had 2 touchdowns the other day, so they got him going. The one thing I'll say is, obviously, the running back situation, has always been an issue, guys getting hurt. Although Gus Edwards had a very good game the other day. So, I think they can maybe try and, get somebody else. Maybe, a trade possibly to get a running back. But listen, Ravens are a good team. They are a good team. Although they struggle here and there, like I said, they have their Jekyll and Hyde, moments. This is a good team. This is a playoff team as long as Lamar Jackson stays healthy. They still made it with Tyler Huntley last year, and they actually almost beat the Bengals with Tyler Huntley. So right now, they could go far. They can go far. Lamar has beaten Mahomes, and that was something that, the first couple of seasons, I was critical of that. You haven't beaten Mahomes yet. You haven't been able to pull off a comeback. Because when, in the beginning when, the Ravens are down, it's well, they can't come back from this. But, they did that a couple of times over the last couple of seasons. So, they've shown that. Lamar's won a playoff game. Um, and Lamar he is a top 10 quarterback. He is. And listen, his throwing was definitely something that a lot of people criticized. And at one point for me, I thought Kyler Murray was going to be, a better thrower than he was. But now we see how that's turned out. That's not the case. But the other thing, too, is the Ravens finally are starting to surround him with guys that he could throw the football to. Now, again, I talked about the game against the Steelers. They were dropping passes, but, he's got a nice connection with Zay Flowers, who looks like a nice player for them. So, now they're starting to kind of surround him with more pass catchers, and that's good. So, I mean, listen, I think they could beat anybody. Obviously, if they have to go on the road and play like Kansas City, I mean, obviously I'm going to favor the Chiefs in that game. But, I mean, I think they could go on the road and beat the Bills. I think they could go on the road and beat Miami. Again, those games are going to be tough, but I think they could beat them. And, again, they almost beat Cincinnati on the road last year with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. I think they could – I mean, they lost to the Jags last year, but I think the Ravens could beat them. So, honestly, like, if they're right and they play like they did the other day, I mean, they could beat anybody. They can. So I think they could go very far this year. I mean, I'm not going to say they're going to, but they have the potential to do that. Again, like I said, I still like the Bengals, and, based on, like, teams that I've liked, I talk about how I like the Bucs. Well, now the Bucs are struggling. So, like, I still like the Bengals, but, the Ravens right now are in first place. That's the funny part, too, is the Bengals are in last place in their division, and I still like them. But, again, they're coming off of a bye week, so, again, that was another week for Joe Burrow to rest up and get that calf healthy. So, we'll see. These two teams play each other one more time, and that's in Baltimore. And, again, the Ravens already beat them. So, right now it's not – the division is not in the Bengals' favor, and also, especially because, like I said, they're in last place. But, yeah, I mean, if the Ravens – like I said, if the Ravens play like they did – the other day, and they don't have a game like, and they're not the Ravens that played against the Steelers, they could beat anybody. They can. So we'll see what happens, but you got to be impressed with what they did, because the Lions coming in, one of the hottest teams in football, Jared Goff playing at an MVP level, and they shut him down. Now, the Lions really didn't have a running game to work with. They were missing... Well, Jahmyr Gibbs did play, but David Montgomery, who was running the football while he wasn't playing, but you got to give the Ravens credit. I mean, they completely shredded that Lions defense. So, for me, they are definitely a dangerous team moving forward. That's a team that I really haven't talked about on the show. I mean, I've been talking about Buffalo, Miami, the Chiefs. I mean, again, signing with the Bengals, saying they're going to win the division, but the other day that was a big win for them. That definitely put a lot of people on notice. And again, that was the good Ravens that showed up. So you get that team, they could beat anybody, but you get the bad Ravens, well, and I did say, like, you don't know what Ravens team you're going to get from week to week, because the Steelers' loss was bad. And the Colts loss was bad too. They lost to Gardner Minshew, a backup quarterback, and that was at home. They were like a 7.5-point favorite, and they lost. So, but yeah, for me, I think they could go very far. I think they could get to the Super Bowl. That could be, if this is the Ravens team that they are going forward, they're a Super Bowl contender. They are. But again, like, the inconsistencies at times, that's kind of what's going to hold them back a little bit, if that's a problem. And got to keep your quarterback healthy. Lamar Jackson stays healthy, that's going to be what gets them to where they want to be. Because if he gets hurt, well, Tyler Huntley's not leading them to a Super Bowl. That's just not happening. But, we'll see. And they'll make some trades. I would imagine. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, we're approaching the trade deadline. That's in, I believe, a week. So, we'll see if the Ravens, do anything there. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, we'll look at their schedule coming up. So obviously, next week. Let's see. Next week they play the Cardinals, so that's a winnable game. They should win that game. Then they're home against Seattle. I think they should win that. Home against the Browns. Think they should win that. Home against the Bengals. It's gonna be dicey, but we'll see. At the Chargers, I mean, I look at them as the better team, but again, like, Chargers got a high-powered offense, so we'll see. But I think Ravens are the better team. They should win. Then they got their bye. Then they're home against the Rams. The Rams, again, they're not the team they were a couple years ago. So I think the Ravens should win that. At Jacksonville on Sunday night, that's going to be a tough game. But maybe they win it this time. Obviously, last year, like I mentioned before, they lost to Jacksonville. At the 49ers on Christmas, it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a very tough game. That could go either way. Home against the Dolphins. Dolphins, they came back against them last year. Ravens were up big. Dolphins came back and upset them. And then they're home against the Steelers. So that's their upcoming schedule. But yeah, I think this is team's ultimately going to end up with I would probably say 11, 12 wins. If everything goes right. With the Lamar being healthy. So, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I mean, there's definitely tough games there. A lot of primetime games. But yeah, Ravens look good. Ravens looked good after this week. And obviously, from week to week, it's always going to be something different. I mean, on social media, everyone's how people are always flip-flopping. I mean, rightfully so. Because every week is different. There have been, so many games, so many teams losing certain games, and you're just I have no idea what's going to happen this year. I don't know who's good and who's not. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it with this topic. Ravens, like I said, they play the Cardinals next week. So that should be that's a winnable game for them that they should win. So with that, we'll get into the next topic of the show when we come back from break. We'll discuss the current standings as they are right now after Week 7. I'll give you my thoughts on that, and then that's going to be it for today, the live portion. So with that, we'll take our final break, and then when we come back, that's what we will discuss. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.